4 o'clock, so I hereby call to order meeting of the Ojai Valley Sanitary District Personnel Committee for February 12th, 2024. Since we're all here, we don't have any 2449 requests. Do we have any public comment? Have you received anything?
Nothing prior to the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, there's no one in the waiting room with hand raised.
No, there is a couple of employees that are attending, but that's it.
Okay. Oh, and welcome to our district council.
We can't hear you, Misha. No.
No. Muted.
You're muted somehow.
Hmm.
I don't see the little microphone with a line through it on the picture.
No, she's okay. She's okay as far as that goes.
Maybe it's a volume thing at the other end. Anyway, while Misha figures out how to connect to the meeting, can you hear us?
Yeah, she can hear me.
We can't hear you.
We just can't hear you. All right, then let's move on to item 4, review of various personnel related matters. Jeff?
So we broke the staff report into 3 sections again, and there's some attachments. So I was going to go each section by section. And but I wanted to sort of start with the first part of the staff report, which is some general and just some discussion. So right before we talked about it at our last meeting, right before the last personnel committee, before we had a chance to get it in the package, we got a list of topics that the employees would like to be considered as we go through this process. We've included it here and a little narrative on each section. I thought we'd go through that a little bit later in the class and comp study. There's sort of had a lot of conversations with staff one-on-one and passing, and there's sort of some themes I think that come starting to sort of be bullet points. I don't want to overstate, that this is the whole list and so forth, but there's sort of some themes I hear. One is our pay competitive? Got the class and comp study done. We're getting ready to be in a position to bring numbers and spreadsheets and graphics to you. The bulk of our employees are in the market range above median. A couple outliers, and we'll talk about those, and we may need to make some adjustments up on a couple. But is our pay competitive? The answer is yes. So we'll see those numbers, but I think it's very clear. The second theme is, are our benefits competitive? We looked at, as I go through here, we went through about 12 different benefits that are sort of standard. And in almost every case, we're in the top third of the comparables. There's a couple of benefits we surveyed because we don't provide those benefits. And so the class and comp survey was a way to say, hey, we think there's this going on in the industry. Can we have some data to talk about?
You may have a gap.
And so I would say the benefits are competitive based on the results, with a couple of caveats for benefits that we don't provide that may be considered. So that's the second theme. The third theme was, anytime there's change or you go through one of these processes, there's this fear of, is something going to be taken away? Are we going to lose anything? And I don't see anything in the class and comp study or the handbook updates that would indicate there's anything to lose, but we'll go through the process and talk about things one by one. But that's sort of the third theme. The fourth theme, it's sort of, several people came to me and said, look at the list, everything great. Their most important thing was great medical coverage. That was very definite, a very specific bullet point of people saying that's a great benefit, knowing that they can make medical decisions or emergencies come up and they're covered. And so that was a major theme. And the fifth one, and it's sort of come up in a group, and I put it here on the bottom of the first page of the staff report, is there's a whole series of benefits Okay.
Somebody's in there twice.
Yeah, I think that's.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
But we can also hear your computer.
How about now?
Yes.
That's better.
Great. Okay. Sorry to interrupt, but I don't know if this is the appropriate time for me to make sure that none of the board members have received any ex parte communications. Would this be a good time to start that?
Sure.
Finish your fifth thing really quick.
No, go ahead. So the question is, just between our last meeting and this meeting, Misha would like to make sure that, or have any disclosure of any conversations outside the meeting.
Exactly.
Awesome.
So just as Mr. Kwong did a couple weeks ago, I'm going to ask questions of the board committee members about receiving ex parte communications. This is pursuant to your bylaws. So I'm going to start with Director Ken Tosh. Have you received any information related to agenda item 4, that is the employee satisfaction survey, class or compensation survey, or the employee handbook? Have you received any information related to this from anyone prior to this meeting or prior to the November 27th, 2023 board meeting?
You asked that question twice. The first time it was somebody said since the meeting. Since the last committee meeting, the only person I've talked to and received information from was Allison sent me the board packet. And I had a discussion with Jeff that probably lasted an hour or so. We talked about a number of things, including things related to what we're talking about today. So Jeff and Allison are it for me.
Okay, and what about prior to the November 27, 2023 board meeting?
What about them?
This is, my understanding is this wasn't discussed at the last meeting, and that there was perhaps some communications prior to the first board meeting where this topic was discussed.
So what is your question?
My question is, did you talk to anybody or receive any information outside of the public hearing context related to the employee satisfaction survey, the class and compensation study, or the employee handbook prior to the November 2023 board meeting?
Yeah, I've never seen the classification and compensation study. I've never read the personnel manual. No, on those 3 items. And the
Okay.
survey form that's in the board packet today, I haven't really talked to anybody about it. That I hadn't already disclosed to Robert, which is that I sent an email to, it was either Bill or Andy, with a sample that I had from 2 other agencies.
Okay, so you sent that to Robert. Was that disclosed in this meeting as an ex parte communication?
Can you repeat that? I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, so you sent something to Robert. Was that shared with the rest of the committee and the board? Whatever you sent to Robert?
Well, when you said Robert, I meant to say Randy. Thought I said
Okay.
Randy and Bill Stone.
Former and current board chairs.
I sent them a piece of sample forms that were done by 2 other agencies.
Mhm.
And we did not discuss them in any length or anything other than I did ask Bill At the end of the November, in fact, I think it's on tape, a November board meeting, I asked him if he'd received my email, and he said, yes, he had. We haven't discussed it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Director Kentosh. Director Stone, have you received any ex-party communication or direct or indirect communication outside of a public meeting on either the satisfaction survey, class and compensation study, or the employee handbook since the January 29, 2024 Personnel Committee meeting?
No.
All right, thank you. Director Quilici, same question. Have you received any ex-party communications or direct or indirect communication outside of a public meeting on either the satisfaction survey, class and compensation study, or the employee handbook since the January 29, 2024 Personnel Committee meeting?
No.
Can I ask why we're doing this? I have been a director for 3 years, and this has never happened before, and now we're all getting interviewed about who we talk to. And I talk to lots of people. I don't always remember who I talk to. But do I have to? Why are we doing this now?
I don't know. I can't answer why now, but it is in the bylaws of OVSD, section 2.7 under ethics, obligations of the board of directors. And it says that directors have to publicly share any information relevant to a matter under consideration by the board, which they have received from sources outside of the public decision-making process. So in other words, if you receive information outside of this hearing, you have to disclose that if it's related to the subject matter of the hearing. We're doing it because we want to make sure that the board stays in compliance with their own bylaws. And also, I believe as Robert explained before, there's Brown Act implications, and we just want to make sure that the law is being followed in the meeting.
Do our bylaws explain what kind of information that's covered by this? Because if I send Bill a copy of something that is like in the public domain, like I go to the encyclopedia and copy something out of the encyclopedia and send it to Bill, do I have to report that? I mean, I'm just curious to know what our bylaws say about what kind of information has to be considered ex parte. I mean, this is just for my own information for future use.
Yeah, so it's on section 2.7 of the bylaws. All it says is that directors shall publicly share substantive information that is relevant to a matter under consideration by the board, which they may have received from sources outside of the public decision-making process.
Okay. How about if, Allison, you email me a copy of the bylaws? I don't know if I ever read our bylaws.
Jim, I think
It's on the website.
the functional,
Are they on the website?
Jim, I think the functional purpose of this, of disclosing is if you have a survey that you want considered by the committee, or you have information you want considered by the committee, the flow of information should come through Allison and get disclosed to everybody at the same time. There shouldn't be sharing of information, whether it's budgets or projects or any sort of policy decisions, whether it's how we deal with ADUs or how we deal with second units or any of those things. Those shouldn't be handled sort of interboard, sort of director to director emails. They should say, hey, if you want us to consider a policy about PSLs or ADUs or second units or anything, that should come to Allison. She would disclose it to you, and then we could have an agenda item that says, here's a topic that a board member brought forward that seemingly should be discussed by the whole board in a public forum. And so it's really just the flow of information to make sure that all 3 of you on the committee or all 7 of you on the board get all the same information at the same time from the same source, that you don't get onesie twosie sorts of conversations.
And the public knows what that information is.
So at the same time you get it, it's public information to the public as a whole, Where if you came forward with an ordinance from some other city and said, hey, I think we ought to implement this ordinance as it relates to something on a district, everybody gets it at the same time. The public gets it at the same time. The conversation and the deliberation occurs at the same time. And it's not handled sort of back channel sorts of, hey, let's go do this and hey, let's go do that. It's really about sort of the bright light of consistency and sort of the information. That's all we want to make sure happens on no matter what it is and what we do. So if you have a survey, and so in this case, the survey should come through this forum like it did on this staff report and say, here's a survey for discussion.
And that's what happened in this case. I want you to know the survey, it's actually, 2 weeks ago, I offered to the committee, take the lead on that and to draft something just to have a draft. That has not been shared or discussed with anybody, other than you guys, but you put it in the board packet. So everything's been done just fine.
I think we're on the right track. And I think Misha's comments and questions are really to make us, remind us to stay on the right track and make sure that we disclose and the information flows the way it is as we projected here today. And I think that's good for no matter what we do. The decisions we make should be available to the public because they should know what, we shouldn't be having conversations outside these walls when it's about a
Undisclosed conversations. Yeah.
And I think it's also, if somebody sent an email to somebody else and said, hey, I'm sending Allison a survey form, it'll be on the next agenda, that's fine. If you start sending it between the 7 of you and start talking about, we'll change this and hey, let's change that and let's include this or let's include that, that's policy discussion that's not happening in the public eye in a public forum. And so I think this is why we wanted to just make sure we're following the process.
And discussion of ex parte contacts or lack thereof, a standard agenda item every Ojai Planning Commission meeting. Because we talk about cases that are tied to certain parcels in the city or policies that apply to everyone in the city. And purpose is to assure the public that as we deliberate on items or cases or policies, that the public knows basis on which we are doing that deliberation.
When that's done for the planning commission, does the attorney ask each board member one after another if they have party information?
Actually,
Just ask for.
actually not, because it's an agenda item. And I happen to be chair of the planning commission this year. And I ask each member of the planning commission who's sitting at the table, have you had any ex parte contacts relating to anything that's on the agenda tonight?
Okay,
So
we don't just ask if they're.
I don't know if it comes before or after public comment, but it's always before we consider any public hearings or discussion items.
And we don't do it all the time because there's not ex parte conversations going on around about which pump and which wire to use. But when we talk about policies, about changing permit rules or changing sort of standards and how we interface with the public, I think it's a good thing to at least pause and say, hey, we're not sort of, it's that old adage, and it's probably a bad term, but it's that cutting deals behind closed doors. It's about the policy and the issues should be talked about here, and then the process follows. That's all I think Mies is trying to do.
Doing the public's business in public. So that includes, you talk to anyone about this, not here, sharing that information with the public. If not, then you share it.
Sometimes this comes up in planning commission when developers are involved and developers are trying to reach out to planning commission and city council and say, hey, approve my project, hey, approve my project. And there's that fear, legitimately so, of deals being cut behind closed doors. And so when some things come forward, we just need to make sure we follow this process.
I assume that in the future, this issue becomes a non-issue if I email somebody and I send a copy to Allison.
You should,
It should come to me directly and then I will distribute it as like a it'll end up on the agenda. You'll send me something saying, can we put this on the agenda for discussion? Or if you want to make a public statement in the director's comments and say, hey, I'd like for the next meeting, I'd like to know if anybody would be interested in putting this on the next agenda for discussion, because you're putting it out there and getting the temperature of everybody in a public.
If I want to send Bill a copy of Steelhead, our Steelhead article, I thought was interesting. It's not going to be appearing on our board agenda item. Do I
No.
have to do you?
And that's not relevant.
If it's not board business, it's if you have an interest and you know a board member has an interest about a topic and you saw something from another city, you know, a sewer spill, a steelhead issue, this issue or that issue, feel free. But if it's going to be a board topic, it needs to come to Allison.
One other thing I just want to put out there that I'm trying to become more, the Brown Act has baffled me for 20 years, or however long it's been. And there is and every once in a while I take a course that covers the Brown Act, and I recall reading at one point in this, and I think I have the document at home, it's an explanation of the Brown Act. It says there's an implied permission to have a talk outside of the Brown Act if you're trying to figure out whether to put something on the agenda or not. So if we have if I have a topic that's interesting to me, Bill's the president, I call Bill and say, hey, Bill, I'd like to put this topic on the agenda. What do you think? I think I'm allowed to do that.
Yes, you are. The limitation on the Brown Act is you can't talk to Bill, then Steve, then Bill, and then Randy. And, you know, you can't have one-on-one conversations with everybody, because then everybody's in on the conversation behind the scenes. If you talk to,
You're deliberating on an issue outside the public view.
if you just call Bill and say,
If you do
I
that.
don't do that.
if you call Bill and say, hey, I want to talk about our ADU issues or our this issue or that issue, that's fine. If I would prefer, if you have an issue you want to talk about, that you bring it to me, because then I can get it on the agenda and say, hey, a director brought up a topic to talk about X, Y, or Z. What's the feeling of the board as a whole? So, but it's your preference. If you call Bill and say, I want to paint the trucks green on the agenda, that's fine. Just don't talk to the other 5 too, and sort of get a circular conversation.
And more commonly, the ex parte contacts, at least in my experience, have to do with what have you heard from people outside the public? What have you heard people outside the public view about an agenda item? Because public wants to know what data you're working from when you deliberate.
Okay, well, I'd just like to commend everyone for being so conscientious. Let's move on.
Okay, so we'll go to the 5th theme that I've heard. There are a number of benefits that all seem to be somewhat tied together. And they are things that relate to how long are medical benefits paid if you're on sick leave? What kind of life insurance do we offer? You know, things that sort of lend themselves to this discussion about what happens if there is someone, an employee, has a major medical issue, or unfortunately a tragic, catastrophic major medical issue. And so we don't have sort of a benefit that is solely catastrophic medical events. But we have a series of benefits that sort of add up to provide some layers of benefits. And I've heard this from a couple of people. Well, what if something really bad happens to me or my family? How would I provide for my family? If I need to be out on leave past 12 weeks, 20 weeks, 40 weeks, what happens? And I think the answer to that, and I hear the concern, I mean, it's a concern we all have as people who have families, is you know, these layers of planning. And I don't think we can tackle this as a one sort of thing. but rather the individual benefits that kind of add up to sort of how someone is covered. And then the other caveat to this whole discussion about major medical is, and you get way down in the weeds, it's very, very, very specific to a person and the individual medical issues that they may or may not have. And so to sort of say, I don't want to sort of simplify this and say, well, here's how the way to deal with it. Because that's really not doing true to the complexities of every case. What does your doctor say? What are you capable of doing? What is your job? Can you work part-time? Can you work remotely? Is your job work remotely?
With an accommodation.
Accommodation. I don't want to wander into sort of these what ifs. They're important to each of us as people and as family members. They're hugely important. But we can't write a policy that does the what if for everybody at every age, at every familial sort of structure, and every potential medical issue. And so I would say there's a conversation that I'm hearing from employees about this, gosh, what happens? And I think the way we handle that is through the individual benefits and say, what's appropriate? What do we provide? Should we provide more? Is it still appropriate? You know, all those sorts of questions. And then those layers all add up to something that provides a framework for employees and their families going forward. I'm not aware of a benefit that says if a bad thing happens to you medically, go to this page in this book and it'll tell you everything that applies. Because there's PERS issues, there's life insurance issues, there's medical premium payment issues. There's all kinds of layers that are in different boxes. And to simplify them into one box, I don't think does it honestly the whole picture. So those are the 5 things that I'm hearing. And if you look at the list, the employees provided that topics they wanted, they sort of mirror some of those sorts of things. So the first section of the staff report in grouping, and I put Jim, because you knocked my ear off the other day, I put the employee survey first, so it would go first, so it wouldn't be at the end of the year.
Off, I deserve a medal.
I didn't put it last, so we'd get to it later. I'd put it first. There are some questions about the survey and doing a survey. From a practical standpoint, doing a survey can be a good thing. I think it's a good thing if you get very detailed responses that allow you to do something. If you ask a question and you get some answers that are poor and some that are excellent, but there's no specificity of what you want to do or options to consider, how do we as staff or you as the board decide what to do with one or more of those rankings? And I used a couple of examples. The one question, how would you rate your job training at OVSD? Somebody may say great, somebody may say not so great. I would think it would be better or more beneficial for us as a district as a whole to know what specifically somebody would like to see in terms of training for them. Would they like to become a better operator? How do I become a safer operator? Would someone else who's in that middle steps in their career say, hey, how do I become a good manager? How do I become a better leader? Something specific that they can actually implement, and we can say, hey, that's a great idea. Let's send you to a course on that, or bring in an expert to talk to us about that. The same thing goes for workplace safety. Can you provide 3 ideas for additional safety measures? Might be a more appropriate question. And I put in here, there have been some great collaborative discussions about safety. And every one of these that I put in here actually came from a conversation with staff. They didn't come from managers just saying, hey, let's go do this.
But doing a survey doesn't preclude you from asking if the survey tells us that people are concerned about the safety, that means it'll tell you that there's a problem that you need to focus on. And then that would lead to a discussion with your staff, request for information, give us 3 ideas that might improve safety, et cetera, et cetera. But the survey, the intention of the survey is not to resolve everything, to tell us we want to focus our attention.
Well, but if we ask the question on safety, name 3 safety measures that you would suggest we do. And somebody might say more frequent safety seminars. Somebody might say, hey, I'm concerned about ladders. Somebody might say, I'm concerned about confined space, or I'm concerned about this or that. Now we can narrow our focus into saying, let's go talk about this issue specifically. And the examples we gave here of the crash cushion, the Meltrix plugs, which are electrical safety, fall protection equipment, which is the trailer that we have that stops somebody from falling if they are going down deep into a pit, and the power pallet jack, so that when they're pulling around loaded totes of chemicals, they're not doing it physically. They got the power assist of the tote. All of those came from not saying, hey, are you concerned about safety, but what would you do? And I think you get more specific results when you ask people, what would you do, rather than is safety poor or is safety good? We also see on certain things that some of these questions really have a huge component into the individual response. Safety is really tied to your personal attention to safety. You may say there's a poor safety record, but how many workers' comp claims have you filed because you weren't following an SOP? And so I would rather have a survey that says, hey, you're a smart employee. I trust you and your role in this organization, and I trust your ability to know and understand your working environment. What would you do that's a safety improvement? And on the same time, on the training, what would you like to see, rather than somebody in the management coming down and saying, we're going to train you on how to, do a certain skill? Is that even something they're worried about, or would they rather have training on a different skill in something that would be more beneficial to them? So that would be my recommendation on sort of the survey questions of content. There's a whole section on the survey questions that we can't ask legally. We cannot ask. We've talked to Lieber Cassidy.
Talked about that, and I'm willing, obviously, to like example that you gave me was, you can ask people if there's any examples of harassment, because if they come back and say, even if they say it's very seldom that we ever observe harassment. If somebody says they see one incidence of harassment, then you got to call a huge team of lawyers to come out and interview everybody. So I'm perfectly willing to eliminate those kind of questions. Let me just ask the committee here, is I think the committee is going to have to, whatever we come up with, we're going to have to agree, all 3 of them.
And recommend to the board.
And make a recommendation.
It won't be our decision.
It won't be our decision, but I'm hoping the committee will all agree. And you guys both disagree with me. I'm willing to go with your opinion.
2 to 1 votes on an issue are not a bad thing here.
Well, they're not bad, but I think if we're going to take something as controversial as this, 3 of us have to work out an agreement on it. That's just how I prefer to do things. For us to collaborate and come up with something we can all agree on. But I have prepared now. I offered last committee meeting 2 weeks ago, I offered to gather a survey just because I was afraid nothing was going to get done. And that we were going to be in this perpetual spinning the wheels on, there's all kinds of minutiae we can deal with. But mine just went blank there uncharacteristically, or characteristically now. But so I prepared this survey, and I modeled it off of one that we did at United Water Conservation District in 2002. It will actually provide us with useful information. My philosophy for a survey is that it should be simple, wording should be easy to understand, and it should be rated from good to bad. I did a survey for my doctor a couple of months ago at doctor's office to rate the hospital visit. And they had to rate all these different questions from 1 to 10. I couldn't tell you the difference between a 7 and an 8. But so I like to prefer to have like 4, 3, or 5 categories. So I prepared this, I consider it to be a very simple survey. It tells me the information I would like to know. But this in the end is a board survey. Jeff sounds like he has some information he'd like to receive from his staff. There's nothing we do to prevent Jeff from surveying or talking to his own staff about their 3 ideas for that, 3 ideas for that, for other thing. So what I would like to just know from you two guys is, it's in the board packet, this draft. It's just a preliminary draft. I don't have any pride of ownership. I have a very thick skin, so you don't have to worry about hurting my feelings or anything at all. The question I have for you guys is simple approach, and I think we should go through question by question if that's appropriate and talk about them. But am I heading in the right direction here, or is this am I heading in the wrong direction?
No, this is what I envisioned, just something that was easy, that somebody could go through. We could get a general idea. You get a majority of these back and it's good and excellent, and you get a few of them that's fair to poor. And we know there's work to do. Get some back that's all poor, and we know there's really a lot of work to do. And I don't want to spend somebody to spend, like you say, hours on something, rating things from 1 to 10. I want something that's easy that we can understand.
The first 4 or 5 questions here, just sort of taking the temperature of the staff. I've taken surveys like this myself from somebody that provides service to me, whether it's a hospital or something else. But typically, if you picked poor, fair, good, whatever, then they'd say, tell me why you said that. Give me an example of why you said morale is poor.
I see this as excuse me.
And I think that would help. The first 4 or 5, I found it interesting that Jeff picked 2 things to talk about that I had made notes myself on. For example, rating job training. I would ask, rather than how do you rate the job training, I would ask, have you had the training in the district that you think you need to do your job? Or are there gaps? Are there other training courses that you would like to take that have not been offered to you, whether they relate to your current job or anything else? If you have any additional needs for training, please identify them. That gives us something better than everybody on staff says the job training is excellent. So how is it excellent? Is it excellent for what you're currently doing? Is it excellent for preparing you to take on more responsibility and get a promotion? Or are there other things that you could be trained on would help? As far as safety, I would ask, have you experienced or observed safety violation? So you probably should have reported it already, but if you haven't, tell me about it. And have you gotten what you think is sufficient safety training? Or are there gaps in the safety training you have received that you think that need to be filled for you to be safe on your job? Those are harder to answer questions. But at least we get something. If 3 or 4 people say we really need training in this particular area, that's something we can work on.
I saw this as being a multiple stage approach. The first step is to find out, do we have any problems? I mean, if the staff says to me, I saw a newspaper, I read a newspaper article some months ago about some train disaster or something. They interviewed the workers and the workers said, oh, we didn't get any training at all. training program was crap. If somebody, if our, and I imagine that the answer from our employees would be get good to excellent training. And,
Do I get enough of the right kind of training?
well, if the staff thinks that there's no problem, it's just a matter of, I leave, if the staff tells the board as part of a survey that they're happy with things, happy with Jeff to deal with staff, get the information he needs to improve things and make things better. But what I'm looking for is a multi-stage process. Stage one is identify where we, problem areas we might have problem. Then stage two would be, if we have a problem, decide whether that's going to require further dialogue or interviews or another survey or focused on safety, whatever. But the first pass through is intended to find out, do we have a problem? And you were one of the folks that spoke at that November meeting. You've seen this survey. Are you laughing at it, or you think it's?
I don't think we can ask staff if they're happy with
I
it.
don't want me to put you on the spot. Sorry,
I don't think that's-
my question.
This is not employees get to come up with the questions. I think if you, the board, have questions that you would like to ask, what I would propose is if there's, and I'm reading the temperature here, there's a desire to do some of this high level 30,000-foot survey questions, as is with a couple of caveats for a little bit more detailed. Well, if you suggested this, what if? Maybe if you could email Allison or myself questions that Steve, you had some questions, and we can put all the questions on a piece of paper, 1 through 25. And then you, at the next committee meeting, you could say, I like questions 1 through 5 and 6 and 12 and 22. And if we do that quick, we can get that on the board agenda for approval for the whole board at the next board meeting, because it's 2 weeks to the next meeting.
So you're going to take the lead on that then?
Well, if you three have questions, additional questions that you would like to see, email them to Allison or myself. We'll come back to you in a week and say, okay, here's the whole long list. These are good. These are, well, let's maybe wait for the next round. And if we do that quick in the next week or so, then that can be on the board agenda to go to the whole board for approval.
Well, I would suggest that we're not going to have it ready for the whole board. We of us haven't met again because.
We're going to meet again before the board meeting.
Before the next board meeting, that after.
Actually be the same day.
Are you guys happy to have Jeff take the lead, or do you want to get it?
Send me your questions and then we'll just do
He's asking us to feed him what we think should be there, and I think that's appropriate.
And send your questions in, and then what format you want the questions asked, like a proposed sort of exactly how you'd want them placed on the survey, and then you can review them, and that will allow you to see sort of what committee directors want certain things asked in a certain format to obtain certain feedback. Maybe some of them can be very simple, and then other ones maybe, sort of fish for some more robust answers.
We have 9 questions on the top front here. Without going through them one by one today, is there 8 you like and 1 you don't? Are there 2 more you'd like added? Are there, I'm just looking at the first page, but if we just sort of put all the questions on a list and go through them at the next board meeting, you axe out the ones you don't want, or you add the ones you do, then we can still get that done and on the board agenda for the February meeting without doing a special board meeting and not waiting until March.
There is one set of I'd like to talk about now, and that is on the second page at the top. Please circle the frequency of the following problem. We have to eliminate her. We have to, in fact, I think we have to delete this whole section. I don't think any of these are going to survive.
We can't ask those questions and,
But if we get an answer, even the answer is seldom, or it's something that happened 20 years ago, somebody answers the question with a seldom, we have to have a whole team of investigators out. So let's just delete this please circle one. Other than that, I don't know if there's any of them that are on the third category. Please check topics that worry you. But that was just a way of kind of helping highlight where people might be concerned. But these are the questions that I came up with.
Yeah, the third category is fine for identifying, is there any concentration of staff anxiety on a particular topic? And do we need to talk about it more in public in front of the staff? I would still, on the first 5 or 6, I'd like at least to say, if you said poor or feel your work is appreciated, if you said never, tell me why.
And that's, Steve, if you,
If somebody's morale is poor, is it because they're being harassed at work? Or they have on-work related problems that are keeping them from being effective or appreciated, feeling effective? I don't mind asking the question, but I think it's too high level a question that if you get an answer that's bad and you say based on that answer, I think we have a problem, but we have no idea what the problem is.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and especially if this is going to be, we're not gonna have names tied to any of these. We're gonna have to have some explanation of why somebody thinks that something is poor or fair.
In order to provide an explanation, someone's gonna have to either type it out. Or my idea was just have it so people could circle, and they don't have to put their handwriting on there. Might be concerned about having their handwriting figured out.
Make it a fillable PDF.
you know, if somebody doesn't want a handwriting or they're worried about handwriting, they can type it out on a separate piece of paper. We'll take whatever, you know, they want to submit. I mean, well, you know, if they have,
Give everybody a fillable PDF and they can type in answers if they want.
there are ways to get around it.
Blank if they want.
There are ways to get around it.
Yeah, I think that having the opportunity to comment on each question after the question, probably better than having or hoping that people will put additional comments at the end of it on the.
We can do a line underneath it, a fillable PDF, whatever, that says, please explain your answer. And if they don't want to
That's
fill it in,
most common when I find myself taking a survey. Why did you say that?
whether it's excellent or poor. Fine.
Or I never fill out.
Okay, so if you have,
You guys get your comments to Alice, and then you guys will put something together for her to.
put all the questions on and add the please explain line, and we'll number them. So we can talk about number 2, number 5, number 12. Go from there.
And so the top of the second page, frequency of the following problem, that's all verboten.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think, you know, it's a minor point, but right under the, how do you feel your work is appreciated by supervisors or management? I think we need to take out supervisors and just put in GM. I don't think it's appropriate to have a survey of rating other public employees. They're all the same. They're all in the same class. And for, that opens up the door for,
I didn't want to have you specifically named as.
you can't, you,
Management's everybody above you in the org chart.
everybody, you know, somebody down in the organization, everybody's a manager. We can't have employees rating other managers. This is a public employee, has confidentiality and employee rights. I can't have people saying, anybody can comment about me any way they want, but I can't have employee X saying something about Allison or saying something about Yan or somebody else. That,
How many specific names mentioned? How
well,
they.
then it would need to say, instead of supervisors or management, it need to say the general manager. Because they can.
Supervisors and management. You have more than one, right?
You cannot have an employee commenting about the performance of another employee. We cannot have that. That is inappropriate in a public. In public.
We haven't said who the supervisors and managers are.
Bradshaw's a supervisor or somebody below him. Nobody can comment on Bradshaw's role. He doesn't He is not beholden to the employees, and he's not beholden to how they feel about him doing his job.
I have trouble with that, sorry. I had a platoon in Korea, an Army platoon. One of my E6s was a terrible manager. He rated people in public, do the job. I eventually got him transferred to the other end of the country in an individual contributor role. And we ran the rest of the year with buck sergeants. Everything worked fine.
Well,
But I mean, this was in a semi-closed environment where I could observe the problem directly, decide to take action. But we're not out in the field seeing if there's a problem with an individual employee. And it may be that only the employees under that employee can in fact describe the problem.
there's a grievance process. We cannot in employment law in California have employees rating other employees. Because they're all other employees from a structural perspective. They work for
An employee, they're rating a management class,
No.
whole class.
I can't have an employee, I'll use your name, sorry, Allison. I cannot have line employees rating Allison's work. I rate Allison's work. Allison reports to me. She doesn't report and isn't beholden to whether or not somebody else thinks her work is poor or not.
I mean, I'll speak as an employee, just as somebody who's mentioned in the class here, because I think it's appropriate, is that my performance is rated by Jeff in my performance review. Any areas of focus or improvement are specifically confidential in that document. They aren't known to other employees, that those may be areas of improvement that Jeff and I are working on together, or that there isn't other training established for those. That's specifically between the person that essentially evaluates my performance and is most familiar with my performance in the context in which I was hired. So if that makes sense, I think that might help us as an employee who is specifically, not named, but in a specific class to be rated on here.
I'm not sure I 100% believe what I'm being told here. Because it's not, we haven't mentioned Allison, we haven't mentioned Bradshaw, we haven't mentioned Jeff, we haven't mentioned any names. It's just, maybe we could rephrase the question so it sounds less like we're evaluating a person, more like we're evaluating a process. But the intention is to evaluate the process. I mean, do you think the district is well run? That's just the question I want to know from the employees.
Well, asking if the district is well run is one thing. When you start putting titles to things, start singling people out, and then somebody can make any comment they want. If you just say supervisors and management and somebody says poor, we have no idea who it is.
Exactly.
So you open yourselves up to inter-staff criticizing each other about doing their job.
But if we're asking for a salary, or we're asking to survey our employees, find out about how they think things are going, kind of hard to discuss how the district is being managed, or
Then put my name in there. I'm fine with my name in there.
okay, let me revise the wording on this.
Yeah, I don't have any heartburns with taking supervisor out. And
Appreciated by management.
appreciated by management.
But if you get two or three that say seldom appreciated, what do we do with that? Think.
Well, it would help us figure out what we're going to do next, if anything.
Okay, I can't see how. That's the problem.
We could do employee of the month. We could put wall of fame of photographs of people who are employee of the month. We could give safety awards. We could give things you could do to show. We used to give people who had safety suggestions, gift certificate to a local restaurant if they had a safety suggestion, like different things you could do to show people appreciation of work.
But if you have an anonymous survey that says, I don't feel appreciated, what do you do?
Have a good talk with your managers and supervisors, and you say, hey, you guys, we gotta show.
Somebody out there doesn't feel appreciated.
So it starts with some appreciation. No. I mean, in order to solve a problem, you have to know that there's a problem. Identify the problem.
I agree, but
And
yeah,
so-
you have to identify the problem. I agree with you completely. Why did you say your work is never or seldom appreciated?
Well, that's the next step. Like I said, I saw this as being a multiple stage process. Step one is to do a very simple survey, find out where people are. Because it may be that things are being overblown right now. We may find that out from the survey or maybe not, I don't know. But if the survey would tell us where we need to focus our efforts.
I worry about having too many surveys. We have one that just says, how do you feel? Some people say, I feel fine, and some people say, well, I don't feel fine.
I would answer that what day.
Why don't we do this?
And then what do you do next? If you got three people that said, performance of the board of directors is poor. Say we got 6 of those. What do we do? Then we go back and we survey everybody again and say, this seems to be a problem. Tell us more.
Well, I just thought that we're gonna rate ourselves. We should ask them to rate us as well.
I think that's fine.
Curious to know.
But if there is a problem, do we need to go through multiple surveys to figure it out? Or if we just say, whatever you rated,
I see the next step being talking to people.
give me 10 words or less about why you said that.
I see the next step being talking about the specific problems we identify. If there are any problems.
And which people do we talk to? We bring them in here to a board meeting or? The process has me confused right now.
Me too.
That's why I'm trying to think, let's at least first time through, let's say, why did you say that? And then we at least have something where we can say, well, we've got 4 people think that the safety training is insufficient. And they say it's insufficient because they didn't get trained on X. Or there were 4 people and they all had a different thing they didn't get trained on that they thought they needed effective in their job or be safe in their job.
Well, what I would do is I would say to Jeff, you need to talk to your supervisors. The supervisors talk to their employees, come back with suggestions. They can handle it themselves. If the issue happens to be safety, I'm perfectly confident that Jeff and the supervisors here address those issues if we make it a priority. So here's the thing. I presented this just to get us talking.
And here we are talking. I think it's great.
So I'm happy to relinquish the authorship of this, let it morph into whatever it morphs into. Why don't you guys get your comments to Allison and we'll see what kind of magic they work with it. And
Next meeting, we'll have more detailed list of things to talk about.
we'll have whatever you guys add to it.
Okay,
And we'll take it from there.
love it.
Okay, so we'll put numbers, we'll put did you say that? You guys have more questions or topic areas?
What's our deadline to get you something?
Today?
Let's see here. The board package has to go out.
So we.
It's not gonna be ready by.
Well, let's make it.
It's a holiday. It's-
Next
so it'd
Monday
be,
is President's Day.
Friday.
Friday,
Friday,
the 16th.
16th.
We asked for public comment on this, Alex, since we're wrapping it up. This particular item. We asked for public comments during committee meeting.
We had a time for comment and there was no
That
one.
was for items that are not on the agenda.
Oh,
Typically when,
I get you. Okay. Is there anyone here present who wishes to speak about the employee satisfaction survey? There is, raise your hand. You just want to listen, and that's fine too. See any hands raised?
we're good.
So just to be clear, you're each gonna send me your questions that you'd like in whatever format, and I'm just going to compile them all for review for next time.
You can edit them too, if you want to.
Well,
Correct or spelling error.
No, yeah, if you want to take care of spelling or things like that, that's fine.
I'm not going to change the question.
I don't want to put the earnest on you guys to change questions because this come back, you made it come out the way you want it to come out. I don't want that. I want this to come from,
Oh, we'll just do spelling or something.
from the board.
Okay, so let's go on to the class and comp study. The real sort of push of the class and comp study at this, just to tell you where we are. The
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah. Have we seen the class and comp study? I don't think I've seen it yet.
No, we just got, about a week or so ago, we got the first draft of some salary market range analysis. And a couple of days ago, we got their recommendations on individual salaries for individual job descriptions. I will say this, that the market is a range. It's not an exact number for each position. The bulk of our employees' job descriptions are on the plus side of median in the market range. So we have a couple that are on a little high, and we have 3 that are just on the low edge of the market for those job comparables. So we're going to bring back to you, we're going to come back and say, here's the market range, here's the median, and a little red dot for where every position falls on that sort of range. And you'll be able to see this position, this job description, this actual individual job is on the low end or the high end or in the median. And we'll come back with some recommendations on any movement that we would recommend on those. Just so there's no rumors going around, the numbers on the high end are not getting cut, making recommendation of cuts. So just nobody go away from this meeting thinking I'm on the high end, I might get cut. That's not going to happen. That's not going to be a recommendation.
Never have seen that happen.
So just get rid of that rumor right off the bat. And those 3 that are low are right on the low end of the market. They're not way off the cliff. So I think there's 3 adjustments and some discussion, but I think it came out really well. The part of the class and comp study we did want to talk about, and then you can decide next steps where you want to go. I can see maybe moving in a couple of different directions based on our conversations. But the first step I thought was to talk about an organizational chart, because that's where the ladders and the succession planning happens. When somebody comes into our organization, can they come in at a lower level, learn something, go up a level, learn something, go up a level, stay their career here? And so these 3 represent sort of the 3 functional areas of the organization. We have an administrative organization or section of our organization. That's all our finance, HR, and IT. The second is sort of an engineering inspection, and then the third is operations. There's a couple of, I included a couple of non-standard things on this down in the purple box in the bottom. We have a number of vendors that we rely on very specifically because of their expertise, but we don't need them 24/7, 365. So things like laboratory testing, high voltage electrical, some of those things are very specific in their job.
Tends to have staff.
And we can't have them. We're too small. We can't have a high voltage electrician on staff, but we can have somebody we can call. A couple of other positions that are currently filled with someone here, and they do a great job. But in the long-term needs of the district, we probably won't fill that position at that level when they retire. I've talked to the people in those positions individually and said, you're welcome to stay as long as you want to. We love you. You do great work. But we're probably not going to be able to find that person and that broad range of expertise because of where the market is today. And so they're wonderful. They're great. They'll stay. We love them. But I don't think there's a real chance that we're going to go find that, very, very unique individual and that very diverse set of skills. And so that applies to the CIP project administrator, which is Rick Knack. He's great. But we don't have heavy duty projects year in, year out. And then our wonderful IT manager who's grown up with the organization. By the way, there's going to be a picture in February board meeting. We found some historic photos. And so we were going to include a little bit of those photos just to show where we started and where we've gone over the years. And it has to.
Somebody had dark hair.
Somebody had hair.
Might have been, yeah.
Vehicles we've changed and upgraded and employees over time. So Jan's got a great level of expertise, but he started in the collection system and has moved on to IT. Well, we're not going to find that same diverse person. So he's great. He's wonderful. He can stay as long as he wants, but I just don't think we're going to be able to find a replica for Jan or Rick when time comes.
And where do those little gray boxes at the bottom continue to function in the collection of boxes at the top?
Well, there are dashed lines. That's the reality of org charts is this org chart is really the future.
Reporting and there's influencing.
Right. And so we have some dashed lines where Jan and Rick report to me through the dashed lines today, but they also branch out and touch all kinds of other departments because of their knowledge and expertise. And so it's great we have that expertise and that broad sort of contact points across the organization. But I don't think in the future we're going to be able to find that person, nor does it make sense to maybe have that person in that level of expertise day in, day out. So those are a couple of things in this org chart. There's a flow in each one of them in a come in, spend some time, learn, grow, and spend your career with the organization in these three functional areas. Not every one of these boxes is filled today. We're not going to fill every box. We have approval we have 18 employees today. We have approval in the budget for 21. We've got a couple of vacancies. But we're not going to fill all these boxes all the time. We're going to have a place where somebody can come in and a very specific job description. Your expertise is at this level. This is where you get hired today. And if you learn these skills and gain this expertise, you could go to the next level up and the next level up and have a place to grow.
If you have 18 versus 21, you think our staff feel overworked right now?
Yes. Yes. That's one of the pushes to push this class and comp study and get it done. We can't hire into some of these positions because we don't have approved job descriptions to hire somebody in it.
Just have the old ones that
We won't.
we have conceded are not appropriate, and that's why we're doing this.
We have both, we're a little short-staffed right now. We also have some people that are in some interim roles, which has given them an opportunity to sort of stick their toe in the water at the next level. And each of them are doing good in different ways and obviously have gotten some experience doing some new things and being responsible for some new sorts of levels of reporting and responsibility. And I think that's a great thing. I don't think it's appropriate for somebody to say, you're this position, We're going to throw you in feet first into the deep end. Here you go. That doesn't make us successful. That doesn't make them successful, and it involves a lot of stress. I think there's an opportunity to sort of allow people to sort of dip their toe in the water and sort of in a safe environment, start practicing and doing some things as they go forward. Really think that
What
works.
you are doing is you're saying, I'm hiring you because of the set of skills that you have and certifications, and you have something that fits that.
Right.
We also have a ladder by which you can improve your life.
And some people decide, you know, I'm really good at this and I like this and I don't want the stress of that. You know, and those are fine decisions too. Run across many in my career. People said, I'm a good this. Understand my job. I'm comfortable with it. I don't want to do your job.
I don't want to be president.
And those are great. They're wonderful things for people to sort of have an opportunity to grow if they want, or an opportunity to stay if they don't want to and do a good job where they are. So I think separating this into three pieces, acknowledging that we have a set of outside experts that we're going to call when we need them, and sort of a couple of positions that maybe in the future, you know, we're not going to be able to fill and don't, you know, sort of just aren't going to be able to be filled in that current set of diverse skills, sort of sets us up for the future. From this, then we develop a specific job duties for each one of these boxes. Now, based on years, you spend 10 years, you get to do this. It's as you move up in opportunity, there's accountability and responsibilities that go with that. So that's what we wanted to outline for you today. At the bottom of the first page of the class and comp study in the staff report, in the first paragraph at the top, give the long list of benefits that we surveyed as part of the class and comp study. And one of the thoughts was maybe that's where we go next in the class and comp study portion of this sort of process is take the whole list and then take one by one, going through each of the benefits, comparing what we do, what the other comparable agencies do, where there's discretion, and where you would like to maybe see us, you know, offer some different benefits or consider or get some additional information. Maybe you say, hey, I like that idea, but I don't know enough. Can staff go dig into that a little deeper? Maybe the next step is we start looking at the benefits. There's about, I think, 12 of them. And like I said, a couple of them on the class and comp study we don't have. Most of them we do. And maybe that's the next step, is to, in the class and comp portion of this process, is to take that list and start chunking those away one at a time.
I think you said on the question of base pay, you now have data.
We have data on every one of those benefits. We have base pay. We have.
Well, with overtime pay, is it time and a half? Is it double time?
That's where we're.
Or when does it become one or the other?
And so we have a list of what we think would be maybe a good sort of starting point for the discussion on overtime. And it's time and a half or double time over 12 if you want to consider that as well. And so we have a presentation we can make on just base pay, overtime, double time. And it gets a little dicey because, you know, when you start accounting for overtime, you're looking at, and I don't want to get in the weeds too much, but I will, you know, over 40 hours in a week. Well, what happens if one of the days you're sick?
Counts as paid time.
Paid time. And so I think there's some push out on the limits that we need to consider, because some of those things pinch some of our operators that actually work on Saturday. But if Monday was a holiday and they haven't hit their 40 hours yet, you know, maybe it makes sense to talk about not just overtime in the hours perspective, but in the overall week flow. You know,
Paid time versus work time.
and so we have some flexibility in that. So maybe we, rather than going to job descriptions, maybe we go to all the benefits in the class and comp study and start working through those and coming up with ideas or thoughts you might have. So that's my thoughts on the class and comp study.
You think?
I'm in favor of working through all this stuff.
I like working through all the benefits. I'm not feeling that I am competent to judge whether the election system operator one job description or two job description, which of those is correct.
Well,
I,
we can provide you the job descriptions that the experts have prepared. They're all expert prepared. These are people that have compared, this is what they do. We have high voltage electricians. We have class and comp people that go read the words of an operator, two operator, three operator, four, and compare it to 15 others or 50 others or 100 others nationwide and say, here's what like-minded, like-positioned people are doing. I don't think there's a lot of discussion at the board level. I don't want to presumptuous, but I don't think you're going to probably read all the job descriptions and say, no, change this word and change this sentence. And you probably will have appropriate questions. How does somebody get from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4? And what's that timeline look like? And what's some of those sorts of
you can
questions?
read those things and see what the differences are, but are the differences appropriate and are the overall job descriptions appropriate? I'm not comfortable with trying to judge myself.
I agree with you, even though I've got experience in job descriptions. Well, I think the board's.
Well, I do too, but it's different jobs, these jobs.
Here. But, the board's function is to set policy, not details, and I don't expect to read a single one of these jobs.
I didn't want
to read these.
I didn't want to be presumptuous and not bring them to you for discussion. There's a big binder, and you're right. There's a lot of words, and would it be appropriate for the board to dig down into those weeds? I don't think so, but I think it's worthy of at least a conversation on a couple. Say, here's what's in them. Here's how it moves in ladder form from a 1 to a 2 to a 3, and sort of a, like you say, set policy, looks fine, professionally prepared, let's move on. That's why rather than doing the job descriptions at this point, since it's less impactful on an individual employee, let's go talk about maybe the benefits where maybe there are questions, maybe there are comments, maybe there are, adjustments that need to be made. But maybe we go there.
Didn't you say that these job descriptions were written up for input, getting input from the staff?
Yes, every staff member got a full interview with the preparers of the job description.
Have they had a chance to comment on their final?
No, they haven't had a chance to comment on their final, but I'm not sure we want to start getting individual comments on them because these have now been job matched across the entire industry. So
They might find a little error somewhere.
somebody wants to review it, I have no problem at all. But I don't want to make this, hey, let me change mine and let me change hers and his and this and that.
Yeah, that defeats the whole purpose of.
These got to be standardized. So, but maybe more impactful is let's go talk about benefits next. And I can put together the list at the next meeting and say, okay, let's start at the top. What is base pay? What is overtime pay? What is how much accrual do you get on vacation and sick leave and life insurance, and yet down into the meat of class and comp studies.
In terms of the job descriptions, I would be interested in knowing, is it a logical progression from a 1 to a 5? Is it feasible that someone can take extra training, get extra certifications and move up that ladder? Or are the job descriptions so vague you as an employee can't tell where you are or ought to be, other than someone in management says, you're there. You know how to get to the next step. Is either more responsibility or more pay or both. Making sure that there is a logical structure, I think is appropriate. Details are, I think we have to leave the management to understand.
Well, I've heard that from Jeff that the thing is very carefully balanced. Push on this side over here, we're going to affect the balance of the whole cart. So I'm not sure our comments are gonna do anything.
I don't have any interest in messing with job descriptions or the way this has been laid out. I'm more interested in the fact that it makes sense to the people that have to work. We've never really, I don't know that we've really ever had anything that's been real logical, I guess. It's been kind of just custom fit to what we want to do.
That's what I'm looking for, is what's the logic of the
And,
structure?
yeah, and I want to get away from that, make sure that we've got something for the older people that have tenure here then they can understand it because they're the ones that it's been built around. You know, I want the new people to be able to come in and say, well, this is where I'm at today. Do this and take this training and do this. This is where I'll be tomorrow. And that was my intention when we approved to have the study done, was that that's something that didn't.
Agree. Okay, so you want to,
So we'll sort of jump the priority list and just talk about benefits, because that's more impactful and people may have questions, say what's going to happen to sick leave, vacation leave, or, pay, health insurance, those are,
where are we in this low to medium to high
yeah,
on each of these things?
let's do that. So we'll put together another staff report for the next meeting and say, here's now the list of benefits, and there'll be a little spreadsheet produced by the class and comp group that lists, it'll be right out of their report. Here's holidays. Here's what we offer. Here's what everybody else offers. Here's this benefit. Here's that benefit. Here's that benefit. And each one of them will have its own individual spreadsheet. You'll see they're pretty easy to read. There's 9 comparables. So there's, 10 lines on a list and
The dollar value on each one is gonna cost the district.
well, I think the first step is to sort of, we'll try and do that. If I can, I'll get that out, but we'll put a dollar figure for everything we can.
If we have a list of 11 benefits, and I don't want to go into more, adding more to our survey. I guess it's probably practical to tell our staff, ask our staff somehow, which benefits of the 11 would they like to see most important for them?
Well,
Is there some way we can do this, something like that?
Well, if you look at the list of topics that I can tell you the 3 that I've heard. Is our pay competitive? Do we have a good medical plan? And then this nebulous, grouping of, what happens in a major medical event. Those are the 3 that I've heard universally, sort of in talking to people. There's also a list in here of topics the employees wanted to discuss at this committee level. Many of them follow that same sort of rational approach. When people say, do we have a 457 match program? That's them trying to plan for their retirement. So it's this future thing. And so there's life insurance on the discussion list. So it's that pay is competitive, good healthcare, and then this long-term medical, catastrophic medical sort of grouping of things, retirement, 457 match, life insurance stuff.
Basket of benefits.
Yeah. So, but we'll put all those on the list. And we'll just start at the top of the list, or if you want to pull out of the list, I'll give the whole list of every benefit and we'll go A to Z. And if you say, no, I want to talk about that one first, we'll.
No, I think you come up with a list and we'll go down through it where you come up with it. I don't think we need to start. Yeah, we don't need to start carding.
Okay. But you'll see the whole list. We're not going to just give you one topic. We're going to give you the whole list.
No, that's fine.
The last item and I hope this can go sort of fast. was the personnel handbook. We scrapped the red line markup. It got too much. It was too problematic for a whole host of reasons.
The white 107-page version at the moment.
So we're going to scrap that. What I included for you this time is a sections to be modified list and a brief discussion of what they are. If you want, I'll copy it and send it to you, but I color coded mine. We have sections of the handbook that I color coded green that are purely a legal issue or a state mandated issue. We have to have a lactation policy. We have to have a violence in the workplace policy. There's a new definition of what an immediate family member is. Bereavement leave obviously has you know, a minimum requirement of the state. We can do more. So there's some things on this list that we're just going to legally fix. We have a number of these in yellow on my list that they're going to get answered or hand in hand with the class and comp study. So there's a class and comp study survey data piece, and then there's a piece in the personnel handbook that kind of mixes together. So we have one of these items, section 5, halfway down the first page here, says salary administration. And we're going to discuss bandwidth and step increases because the class and comp study is recommending some changes and some improvements. But those bandwidth and step increases are specified in our handbook. So if we do something on the class and comp study, we're going to have to go over to the handbook and write down what we're going to do.
How broad are the bands and how much overlap is there between steps?
So that's green and yellow. Orange on my list here is something that deals just with a benefit, right up at the top, the new section. I think we need a policy regarding sharing or donation of sick leave, because one of the questions in this nebulous catastrophic medical, and it's an appropriate one, is can I donate some of my sick leave to somebody else because they've run out? Agencies frequently do that. I think it's a good policy that allows somebody who's new and only been here a month or 2 or 6 months and hasn't built up a balance, and then they have something come along in their life. One of the questions was, hey, a new young employee comes here and 6, 9, 12 months down the road has a baby, but hasn't built up a leave bank to be able to be off with their new family. Well, other people that have hours could donate to that person and say, hey, you know, I think it's a great thing. It's camaraderie. It's all pulling in together, but we need a policy about how you do that. So that's in orange because that's a benefit question. Overtime section 2.17 is orange because that talks about, you know, how we're going to redefine overtime. The last color on mine here is pink, and that's having to do with purely a handbook change. And so about 3/4 of the way down, we have, you know, discussing a 2 or a 3 week limit on vacation usage requires coordination with district operations. We have no problem with people taking long vacations, but we just want to make sure, hey, the whole department can't go on a 3-week vacation all at the same time. So, you know, let us know in advance, put it on the calendar, taking a 3-week, you got somebody else in-house that's going to be around to cover you. But we at least need some sort of policy that says that's our policy. That would be in the hand. So I'll be happy to just Xerox my color and get it out to you so you can see it. The next step would then be as we
3 or 4 or 5 separate lists and
right
this
as
is
we work.
state law. This is just a change.
The green is state law, and then
There's a key in case I forget.
it's got a key up in the corner here. Sorry,
Yeah, I'm good.
I will do a little better job. This was just my notes today while I was getting prepared. I'll do a nice legend.
Doesn't look too thick.
No, it's actually only 2 pages.
Read that.
So I will do that. And then when we work through each section, now you thematically know what we're doing. Rather than this 106 pages of red line markups, let's at first go through and say, hey, we're going to add a lactation policy and a workplace violence policy. The lawyer's got to go do that. Here it is. That's what they presented. So that's kind of what I wanted to sort of start with was can I get myself organized and explain what we're doing in each section, and go from there. The last item in the package is the topics that the staff wanted to include as sort of a discussion point list. It's not a, they didn't want to be saying this is the whole list and don't talk about anything else. But I put together a little brief discussion package of the 11 items they put on the list and what are those and what do they look like and what do they mean?
These are the responses to what in the employee handbook right now hits you in the funny bone. And you're wincing every time you think about it.
Well, like one of the questions is, and I think when we get into the benefits, we'll talk about it. One of them is life insurance. And you go, okay, life insurance. Agencies such as ours commonly do life insurance. It's very common. The level is different at different agencies. And there is a significant problem with buying life insurance on the market. So you can write a policy that says we're going to give everybody X. I'm not sure we can go buy it. Not even offered, because if somebody's of a certain age or has medical conditions or other things, you can't buy the life insurance. And so we kind of need to talk through some of those nuances and not say we're going to give somebody something that's undoable by us. Or in a year or so, or at the new calendar year, we've had a couple of people where we currently have a life insurance policy for our employees at certain levels. We've been notified by the insurance company. They know when someone's birthday is, and they've written us a letter and saying we're not covering that person for that level anymore because they've reached a certain age. And so
Does CSDA
look at some other
life insurance?
we're going to look at some other options, but
That's at least a bigger pool. You can spread the risk.
yeah, the problem is life insurance as a whole in our society is a whole different animal. It's not like buying a widget. It's really tough. So when we talk about that benefit, talk about how much does it cost? How much would it cost to increase or improve that? Is that something that's appropriate? How do we compare? What's the market conditions? Can we go buy that kind of life insurance? And so we get down in the weeds on the topic a little bit, and we'll get all that data for you. So this is the list of discussion items that staff wanted. I think they're all good. I think many of them are included in other topics. Again, the orange is benefit questions that'll all come up during the class and comp study. The green are more policy or state law or something that is outside of our control. And so there's a couple of those. And so when we get to each of those topics, we'll include that discussion, and get some input from the employees on kind of what they were thinking. And if, see what's appropriate. So that's the last piece, sort of this topic narrative. I guess I would summary with, we'll push ahead with another meeting for the survey quickly before the board meeting. At the next committee meeting, we'll have a list of all the benefits and start looking through the comparables. And then I kind of would put the handbook third, because the class and comp study is going to answer some questions we need before we get to the handbook. We may pull some sections of the handbook up to go head to head with class and comp study, just so you can see what the language is. So
A lot of overlap with this third.
there's a lot of overlap. And I think the driver is the class and comp study more than anything else in terms of some of these specifics, other than the green, which is state law. So that'll kind of take a third seat on the list a little bit. But we'll push the survey ahead, and we'll bring the list of benefits back to you for starting to chew through, and we'll show everybody where all the numbers are. And if that makes sense, tomorrow we'll look at calendars and send you out an email of committee times. And
We have one meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now already. And I think Allison was asking in second
And the only
and
thing
fourth
is,
Monday's work.
yeah, the only thing is for this particular instance, that won't be able to make the board agenda because that is the same day as the board meeting. So I can't, it'll be too late for the packet. I don't know if you guys want to move to a day off schedule just to try to get that survey portion
We'll
done.
send you some time so we can get it on the board agenda for the survey.
Maybe just 1 week earlier,
1 week earlier is the holiday.
the 26th. So what would that be? The 20, well, it'd be the 19th. So maybe like 20th, 21st.
First, yeah.
That work for everybody? We'll send out some times and
That works for me, that's fine.
I encourage us to meet early and get this process moving, but at the same time, we gotta accept the possibility that we're gonna not, certainly, we may have a round of adjustments to make.
That's why we're here.
All right,
And then I will clean up my markups and, just so the lawyer in the room knows, it'll be the same list. Just we'll have some highlighters on it.
Or you could make 3 lists. These are the topics that are affected by changes in state law. Period. These are the topics that are affected by something else.
But we'll get that out, but
It's
I'll
all the same text.
don't want to send out something that's didn't get agendized.
Sounds good. Can't do the 16th. Well, that's too late to it. Well,
Yeah, it's
it's sort of the deadline for agendizing for the board.
Fridays are a little tough because that'll be the day I'm sort of pushing to do our accounting stuff.
Right? Reports, any committee members have reports?
for me,
Same here. General manager, anything else to add?
No, I would just add, and you've been on the email list, got quite a little push on emergency repairs going on down by Foster Park. So it was out this morning. If either of the other ones want to get a site visit, let me or Liz know, and we'll be happy to take you down there.
I personally hate to take you away from what you're doing, but it sounds like we're losing the bank north of where we just lost the bank.
We're losing the bank. This is much further south. This is down in Foster Park.
Oh, okay.
This is down in Foster Park. As you come up the highway and you go from the 4-lane to the 2-lane, and there's those 4 houses that are right there along stapled to the hill, you know, on before you get to Casita Springs
Right along the Edison curve there.
or Edison Curve as you're going northbound, right across from there in the Ventura River. The Ventura River is encroaching east.
Oh, okay.
We need to do some rock to hold it back. We learned today, and there's coordination going on. The city of Ventura also lost a water line, and so they've got a big project that they want to do. Ours is probably peanuts compared to theirs, but ours is important to us.
The water main that runs in the same general area?
No, not the big water line. They have some wells on the west side of the river over there in the Santa Ana Road, and the line comes across the river and feeds into their system, and they lost it, you know, out in the river. They have an old system that, you know, kind of this was placed under the surface of the old river, and it's finally become exposed.
Could have done something on that Santa Ana Bridge when we did.
This is the Foster Park, not
Further down.
way further down.
Okay.
So if you want to come see, I think the stuff starts really moving tomorrow. That's all I have.
And no other business obvious before the committee. 5:40 adjourned. Thank you.